All right, all right. We finally got here. I'd like to welcome you all to the broadcast. Just seems that anything that can go wrong will. I think I'm in Facebook jail now. All right. I think I'm in Facebook jail now. I can't get through to any of my accounts. So we're going to keep on going. We're going to go back to what we were doing. We were talking about the 33 strategies of war. And I'm sure this is not a tasteful subject for some, because of course, as we explain things, there's a tendency for people to get in their feelings about it, especially when, they're trying to control, those things that you read and those things that you talk about. Okay. We're at right now, we are on took me a while to get set up. Had some difficulties here technically. All right, I think we left off at keys to warfare. I'm sharing my screen with you. All right, we left off at keys to warfare. All right. Now, understanding that in dealing with people and in dealing with certain things, there needs to be a strategy, because without a strategy, you're pretty much going to find yourself in a tough situation. I know the title on the screen says you need to see this, but that is right. You need to see that. That was the sermon on Sunday, and I think I just wanted to leave it. Okay. Now, as you see the highlighted section, it says many use friendship as a way to mask aggressive desires. So they come close to you to do more harm. Now, I want to make you aware of something, is that control, as we know it, is really not that difficult to attain. Are you listening to me? Control is not that difficult to attain, and the reason why it's not difficult is because people are so willing to give things away. Are you hearing what I'm saying? It is so easy to give to gain control, and it's easy because people are easily led because you give them something. Now, I think the thing that probably caused a problem on the platform is the fact that in this current climate, we're not supposed to be having these kinds of conversations. But I am a relationship consultant. Okay. And because I am a relationship consultant, my goal is to see that you have quality relationships. Is to see that you have quality relationships. And the one thing that hinders relationships is external stress. When you have things going on outside of your relationship, it will certainly have an effect. However minor, it will still have an effect. Now, what we don't want to do is we don't want to discount the fact that there are external factors. Your enemy always wants you to downplay that. He always wants you to downplay it. Oh, it's not so bad. Oh, that's not as serious as you think. There's always something that's not as serious, that's not as hard. And then the worst thing is they encourage you to suffer with it. Encourage you to suffer with it. Okay? Now, watch this. Watch this quote from William Dugall. It said, as one travels any one of the large rivers of Borneo, one meets tribes that are successfully more warlike. In the coast regions are peaceful communities which never fight, save in self-defense, and then with but poor success. Whereas in the central regions where the rivers take their rise, a number of extremely warlike tribes whose raids have been a constant source of terror to the communities settled in the lower reaches of the rivers. It might be supposed that the peaceful coast people would be found to be superior in moral qualities to their more warlike neighbors, but the contrary is the case. In almost all respects, the advantage lies with the warlike tribes. Their houses are better built, larger, and cleaner. Their domestic morality is superior. They are physically stronger, are braver, and physically and mentally more active, and in general are more trustworthy. But above all, their social organization is firmer and more efficient because their respect for the obedience of their chief, for and obedience to their chiefs and their loyalty to their community are much greater. Each man identifies himself with the whole community and accepts the loyalty, performs the social duties laid upon him. Now, it's documented, and we've been yet digging it up, that most people are not aware of how this country has been conducting itself since its inception. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm anti-American. I'm very pro-American, but Americans won't act right. I'm here to say it. The government won't act right. They do whatever the hell they feel like doing, when they feel like doing it. Okay? And those people that we have chosen to represent us are right in the boat. There are very few of them that will actually take the correct approach, as opposed to doing things according to party lines, as opposed to following the money. It is what it is. Now, I want you to pay attention today, especially today. Okay? Because you're going to have to make some decisions real soon as to how your life is going to go. And you better know that it's not going to be an easy road. Anything worth having is worth fighting for. Show me a man that's not willing to fight for what he wants, and I'll show you a man that's a slave. People are usually good at hiding their hostility. Y'all reading just what I'm reading, hopefully. People are usually good at hiding their hostility, but often they unconsciously give off signals showing that all is not what it seems. But one of the closest friends and advisors to the Chinese Communist Party leader Mao Zedong was Lin Biao, a high-ranking member of the Politburo and possibly successor to the chairman. In the late 1960s and early 70s, though, Mao detected a change in Lin. He had become effusively friendly. Everyone praised Mao, but Lin's praise was embarrassingly fervent. To Mao, this meant something was wrong. He watched Lin closely and decided that the man was plotting a takeover, or at the very least, positioning himself for the top spot. And Mao was right. Lin was plotting busily. The point is not to mistrust all friendly gestures, but to notice them. Register any change in emotional temperature, unusual chumminess, a desire to exchange confidences, excessive praise of you or third parties, the desire for an alliance that may make more sense for the other person than you. Trust your instincts. If someone's behavior seems suspicious, it probably is. It may turn out to be benign, but in the meantime, it is best to be on your guard. You can sit back and read the signs, or you can actively work to uncover your enemies, beat the grass to startle the snakes. Boy, where have we heard that before? As the Chinese say, in the Bible, we read of David's suspicion of his father-in-law, King Saul, secretly wanting him dead. How could David find out? He confided his suspicion to Saul's son, Jonathan, his close friend. Jonathan refused to believe it, so David suggested a test. He was expected at court for a feast. He would not go. Jonathan would attend and pass along David's excuse, which would be adequate but not urgent. Sure enough, the excuse enraged Saul, who claimed, "Send at once and fetch him to me. He deserves to die." David's test succeeded because it was ambiguous. His excuse for missing the feast could be read in more than one way. If Saul meant well toward David, he would have seen in his son-in-law's absence as no more than selfish at worst. But he secretly hated David. He saw it as an effrontery, and he pushed him over the edge. Follow David's example. Say or do something that could be read in more than one way. That may be superficially polite, but that could also indicate a slight coolness on your part, or be seen as a subtle insult. A friend may wonder, but it will let it pass. A secret enemy, though, will react with anger, any strong emotion, and you will know that there is something boiling underneath the surface. Often the best way to get people to reveal themselves is provoke tension and argument. The Hollywood producer Harry Kahn, president of Universal Pictures, frequently used this strategy to ferret out the real position of people in the studio who refused to show what side they were on. He would suddenly attack their work or take an extreme position, even an offensive one. In an argument, he provoked directors and writers would drop their usual caution and show their real beliefs. Understand, people tend to be vague and slippery because it's safer than outwardly committing to something. If you are a boss, they will mimic your ideas. Their agreement is often pure courtesy. Get them emotional. People are more sincere when they argue. If you pick an argument with someone and he keeps mimicking your ideas, you may be dealing with a chameleon, a particularly dangerous type. Beware of people who hide behind a facade of vague abstractions and no partiality. No one is impartial. A sharply worded question, an option designed to offend, will make them react and take sides. Man exists only as far as he is opposed. Listen, I want you to grab on to this, because remember something. Let me show you guys something. See this book right here? See this book right here? All right, y'all see it, right? Okay. If you were ever in the military, you got this. Okay. Now, let me see what's going on here. All right. I want to show you something. Okay. Now, in the beginning of this, they show you your code of conduct. how you're supposed to act in the event of a war. All right. Now, the first ones deal with your basic rights. And of course, they would make you aware of the possibility of being approached or captured by the enemy. So they want you to understand, if that happens, you need to close off your ranks and don't give them anything that they can use against you or the country. Okay. All right. Now, if we take this to heart, war is hell. Okay. But I want to show you something. All right. This is in the Code of Conduct. Article 2. Let me put it up in front of the camera for you so you can see it. All right. Can you see that? All right. All right. Article 2. It says, I will never surrender of my own free will. If in command, I will never surrender my men while they still have the means to resist. Number 3, Article 3, it says, if I'm captured, I will resist. I will continue to resist by any means available. I will make every effort to escape and aid others to escape. I will accept neither parole nor special favors from the enemy. Now, as we discussed earlier on, you got to know who the enemy is. And if you don't believe that person is your enemy, just like Jonathan here, Jonathan could not come. He couldn't fathom the idea that his father hated his best friend. And why would he feel that way? Well, dad's providing. Dad is making a provision. And sometimes we're blinded by what people do for us. We're so blinded that that the idea that that person could do you wrong never enters into your mind. Okay? And there are quite a few people. There are quite a few people who have experienced this. And the idea that somebody would do the things that they've done, to them, it's unthinkable. So now watch this. He continues. Remember, we're plotting a strategy now. All right. This is what it says. Sometimes it is better to take a less direct approach with your potential enemies, to be as subtle and conniving as they are. Okay, here's an example. In 1519, Herman Cortez arrived in Mexico with his band of adventurers. Among them, 500 men were some of the loyalty, whose loyalty was dubious. Throughout the expedition, whenever any of Cortez's soldiers did something he saw as suspicious, he never got angry or accusatory. Instead, he pretended to go along with them, accepting and approving what they had done. Thinking Cortez weak and thinking he was on their side, they would take another step. Now he had what he wanted, a clear sign to himself and others that they were traitors. Now he would isolate and destroy them. Adopt the method of Cortez. If friends or followers whom you suspect of ulterior motives suggest something subtly hostile or against you or against your interests or simply odd, avoid the temptation to react, to say no or get angry, to even ask questions. Go along or seem to turn a blind eye, your enemies will soon go further, showing more of their hand. Now you have them in your sight and you can attack. Listen to me carefully. Okay. If it gets to the point, listen to what he just said. If it gets to the point that they just outright getting you, y'all not talking to me. If it gets to the point that he's outright attacking you, either you're blind or your loyalty is covering, blindfolding you. If what they're doing is a direct attack and you know it, there is no way you can explain away someone outright attacking you. No way. You can try with all your might, just not going to work. You know, sometimes I look at the way things are going in our communities and in our world, and I wonder that, you know, what's going to happen years down the road? What's going to happen? And of course, because people who are spiritual, and I'm not talking about churchy, spiritual, I mean in connection with the universe, and see and can feel the nuance of change. They can see what's going to happen a couple of years down the road. And here's the reason why. Everything has a pathology, a path it takes to arrive at where it is. You're in a relationship, there's a pathology to that relationship. And it might have started with a dating site. It may have started with an introduction to a friend. It might have started with you sparking up a conversation. And that happens on both sides nowadays. There are days when females are now approaching guys and, you know, sparking conversation, setting up dates and all this kinds of thing. Okay. And then you start talking, and in the course of the conversation, it leads to something more intimate, a little bit more deep. And then all of a sudden, the suggestion of physical intimacy comes into play. And sometimes they're fishing, sometimes it just naturally morphs into that. You end up at somebody's house, end up at somebody's hotel room, end up in somebody's car, and boom, it happens. See, there are people who are still saying that pregnancy is a mistake. Pregnancy is by far not a mistake. I'm here to say this right up front. You can talk that junk all you want to, but if you intended to have intercourse with someone, you intended to get pregnant, because that's all sex can produce. That's what it's for. See? So you thinking, no, it wasn't no mistake. Okay. A mistake in terms of a social thing is, I didn't mean to. Well, you really meant to. But because you didn't foresee, or you didn't pay attention to the outcome, to the result of the outcome, which is what people do mostly. We do this a lot. We'll do something, we'll act on something, we'll do an act or get involved in an activity, and so get so involved in enjoying it that we don't, when it talks about where it ends, we don't pay no attention. Okay. Like going on a weekend binge. Okay. Hopefully you're not driving, because it may lead to an accident, but that's what happens. Or it may lead to an illegal relationship and somebody not being aware of what's going on. Or if you're on the female side, it could lead to you getting taken advantage of, possibly hurt, possibly some other heinous situation happen. I don't want to mention it. Or with the guy, you may end up getting involved with someone, or get in a situation where, the future comes and you don't know how. I don't know how this happened. Yeah, you were drunk or high, intoxicated, inebriated, whichever one you want to choose. Okay, so let's keep moving. An enemy is often large and hard to pinpoint. An organization or a person hidden behind some complicated network. What you want to do is take aim at one part of the group, a leader, a spokesman, a key member of the inner circle. This is how activist Saul Alinsky tackled corporations and bureaucracies. In his 1960s campaign to desegregate Chicago's public school system, he focused on the superintendent, knowing full well that this man would try to shift the blame upward. By taking repeated hits at the superintendent, he was able to publicize his struggle, and it became impossible for the man to hide. Eventually, those behind him had to come to his aid, exposing themselves in the process. Like Alinsky, never aim at a vague, abstract enemy. It is hard to drum up the emotions to fight such a bloodless battle, which in any case leaves your enemy invisible. Personalize the fight, eyeball to eyeball. Danger is everywhere. There are always hostile people and destructive relationships. The only way to break out of a negative dynamic is to confront it. Repressing your anger, avoiding the person threatening you, always looking to conciliate. These common strategies spell ruin. Holy bananas. It's funny. It's funny. And these are all the things people that they tell you. Okay? They tell you ignore the person. Oh, you just stay away from ignoring. No. No, we need to tackle this right up front. Okay? Avoidance of conflict becomes a habit and you lose the taste for battle. Are you listening? Let me read that again. There are always hostile people in destructive relationships. The only way to break out of a negative dynamic is to confront it. Okay? Now, I'm going to say something, and I'm hoping that all of the men are listening. Fear is a normal, natural part of your life. Are you listening? There is no one who has ever lived that was completely fearless. Okay? Complete absence of fear. There's a fear somewhere. It might not manifest as you know it, and it might be a minor fear. Okay? It might be a minor fear, but it's still fear nonetheless. When fear shows up, guys, check this out. You get the opportunity to show one of the greatest attributes that any woman has ever seen. You want to hear it? Courage. Are you listening? Courage is the one trait. Are you hearing me? It is the one trait that will always garner respect. Always. There's not one, listen here, there's not one time that a person who was afraid that conquered their fear wasn't respected at the end. Okay? Now, I want to say this, dark Americans, we can be very courageous, but you know what happens? Then later on down the line, we'll be punkish. And that'll negate anything you did that's courageous. Like all of the people that inventions, all of the things that have been invented, okay? All the people that stood up against government in the face of the supremacy dynamic, the white supremacy dynamic, the racism, the sexism, all those people that stood up, courageous. Then you'll see them turn around and let somebody take their land. Or you see their daughters twerking. Y'all not listening to me. Okay? Y'all are not listening to me. Sometimes some things just don't make a whole lot of sense. But let me say this to you, okay? That there is a way out. Listen here. Avoidance of conflicts becomes a habit. You lose a taste for battle. Feeling guilty is pointless. It is not your fault. You have enemies. Feeling wronged or victimized is equally futile. In both cases, you are looking forward. You are looking inward, concentrating on yourself and your feelings. Instead of internalizing a bad situation, externalize it and face your enemy. It's the only way out. You heard me? Y'all, look, I hope you're reading it like I'm reading it. I hope y'all downloaded this. Listen, you can find this. You can find this on PDF Drive. Listen here. You can find this here. PDF Drive is an awesome website, and I would encourage you that to subscribe to it. You really should subscribe to it. And the reason why is because there's a lot of books that you haven't seen or that you've been looking for. You'll probably find it there, because what people do is they upload PDFs to the net, for students, for other purposes. And it's important that we continue learning. Okay, we owe that, to our children, to those people we hang around who trust us. So keeping it moving. Okay, I want you to look at this. This is attempt. This is from the slave narrative, or from the book My Bondage and My Freedom by Frederick Douglass. All right, we're going to try to wrap this up after this. Listen to this. The frequent hearing of my mistress reading the Bible, for she often read aloud when her husband was absent, soon awakened my curiosity in respect to this mystery of reading, and aroused in me the desire to learn. Having no fear of my kind mistress before my eyes, she had given me no reason to fear. I frankly asked her to teach me to read, and without hesitation, the dear woman began the task, and very soon, by her assistance, I was a master of the alphabet. I could spell words of 3 or 4 letters. Master Hugh was amazed at the simplicity of his spouse, and probably for the first time, he unfolded to her the true philosophy of slavery and the particular rules necessary to be observed by masters and mistresses in the management of their human chattels. Mr. Auld promptly forbade the continuance of her reading instruction, telling her in the first place that the thing itself was unlawful. It was also unsafe and could only lead to mischief. Mrs. Auld evidently felt the force of his remarks, and like an obedient wife began to shape her course in the direction indicated by her husband. The effect of his words on me was neither slight nor transitory. His iron sentences, cold and harsh, sunk deep into my heart and stirred up not only my feelings into a sort of rebellion, but awakened within me a slumbering train of vital thought. It was a new and special revelation, dispelling a painful mystery against which my youthful understanding had struggled, and struggled in vain. To wit, well, thought I, knowledge unfits a child to be a slave. I instinctively assented to the proposition, and from that moment I understood the direct pathway from slavery to freedom. This was what I needed, and I got it at a time, and from a source whence I least expected it. Wise as Mr. Auld was, he evidently underrated my comprehension and had little idea of the use to which I was capable of putting the impressive lesson he was giving to his wife. That which he loved most, I most hated. And the very determination which he expressed to keep me in ignorance only rendered me more resolute in seeking intelligence. That is My Bondage, My Freedom by Frederick Douglass. Okay? Understand. Listen here. There are times when people are in place to help you, and there's somebody who will come along. Listen here. Somebody who will come along and tell them that they shouldn't be doing it. Somebody who's more in power. Okay? I often refer to the mission statement for the General Education Board, which of course was not to make scholars, and they said it. We're not here to produce scholars, but we want to train better farmers and tradespeople. Okay? Now, I don't know how that conjures up any images in your head, but there's nothing wrong with being a tradesperson. In fact, if you have a bachelor's degree in a liberal art, I'm suggesting you take up a trade. Glazing, bricklaying. It's heavy, hard work at times, but guess what? If the system falls apart, which is very close to, what are you going to do? See, in Africa, a young man, once he passed his rite of passage, he had to go build his own hut. Okay? He had to build his own hut. Then he could choose a wife. If he didn't have a hut built, he couldn't choose a wife. They wouldn't even let him. Okay? Because he had to fully demonstrate all adult male capabilities. They went him through the training. He had to get circumcised. He had to hunt an animal. He had to go through a combat training. He had to learn how to build and maintain and operate his own weaponry. He developed his own identity. They also gave him certain domestic skills. And he had to demonstrate them or he didn't pass. And if he didn't pass, he was forever considered a child. Never even able to really talk to a woman. Are you listening to me? I think we probably need to bring that back. See, they took out home economics so that the girls don't learn how to cook. And they took out shop class. Industrial arts is what they used to call it. They took out industrial arts. So now you don't know how to cook. You don't know how to fix things in your house. So now you got to call somebody who, and of course, those who are doing those manual labor jobs are always considered less intelligent. I don't know. Jesus was a carpenter. Okay. Carpentry is one of the few trades that requires you to have some mathematical skills. Okay. Brick masonry, as we know it today, is very manual. Okay. You got to do some calculations as to how to mix your mud, how to how many bricks that you need. But guess what? If somebody ordered it, who ordered the job already gave you all of that. So then that's all you need to do is just go on ahead and do it. But a carpenter is different because a carpenter comes in and they see the structure and he has to be the one to determine where those things go in exactly. Has to cut the wood and make sure that it fits as it's supposed to fit. He had to recognize the different types of joints. He had to recognize the different types of fasteners. He had to realize, what type of wood goes where and what it's used for. And even if he had a more delicate kind of wood, he knew he had to have a special set of tools for. See, so there are some occupations that they don't push you into because they become very lucrative. Okay. But people who do blue collar work are always considered to be less intelligent. And I can tell you that's far from the fact. My father was blue collar most of my life, and there probably wasn't a more intelligent man that I've ever known. There was always something new he was talking about, always something new he was teaching. He was a constant reader. He always understood certain dynamics, and even though he wasn't that great a teacher, but some teachers don't have to be great teachers. All you have to do is sit around them. Okay? Now, let's go back to this. Let me see this one more section. All right. The child psych. Yeah, this is the part. I like this part. I want y'all to get with this. Grab this up. It says a child psychologist, Jean Piaget, saw conflict as a critical part of emotional development. And see, I've been saying this. I've been saying, listen, if there's a time when you can talk to somebody, and there's a time when you have to put the hammer down. When somebody's barking in your face and they leave you no way out, diplomacy is over. And you're going to have to let them know the way they bringing it, they don't want to take it back. They don't want that smoke. So this is what he says. He says, conflict is a critical part of mental development. Through battles with peers and then parents, children learn to adapt to the world and develop strategies for dealing with problems. Those children who seek to avoid conflict at all costs, or those who are overprotective parents, end up handicapped socially and mentally. The same is true of adults. If it is through your battles with others that you learn what works and what doesn't. How to protect yourself? Instead of shrinking from the idea of having enemies, then embrace it. Conflict is therapeutic. I like that. Conflict is therapeutic. Okay. And whether people want to believe that or not, if you look back at the days when you got spanked for doing something wrong, you realize that those are the things you poignantly remember. Okay? The first time you took something that didn't belong to you. The first time you got busted bullying. The first time you did something like came in too late, or or whatever. You're talking about timeouts. No. And here's where we differ. Dark Americans train their children differently. And just the very fact, if anybody wants to talk about the white supremacy dynamic, you can start right there. They're going to tell you how to raise your kids. See? Which means that it implies that the way they do things is the standard. No, that's the standard for you. Anyway, watch this. Enemies bring many gifts. For one thing, they motivate you and focus your beliefs. The artist Salvador Dali found early on that there were many qualities he could not stand in people. How many of us are there? Come on now. Conformity, romanticism, piety. At every stage of his life, he found someone he thought embodied these anti-ideals, an enemy to vent on. First, it was the poet Federico Garcia Lorca, who wrote romantic poetry. Then it was Andre Breton, the heavy-handed leader of the Surrealist movement. Having such enemies to rebel against made Dali feel confident and inspired. Enemies also give you a standard by which to judge yourself, both personally and socially. The samurai of Japan had no gauge of their excellence unless they fought the best swordsman. It took Joe Frazier to make Muhammad Ali a truly great fighter. A tough opponent will bring out the best in you. How about that right there? Let me highlight that. If you have your reading, and the bigger your opponent, the greater the reward, even in defeat. How about that, right? Now, okay. It is better to lose to a worthy opponent than to squash some harmless foe. You will gain sympathy and respect, building support for your next fight. Being attacked is a sign that you are important enough to be a target. Are you listening? Come on now. I like this whole paragraph, and we're going to close it today. Leave y'all with something to think about. All right. It says being attacked is a sign that you're important enough to be a target. You should relish the attention and the chance to prove yourself. We all have aggressive impulses that we are forced to repress. An enemy supplies you with an outlet for those drives. At least you have someone on whom you can unleash your aggression without feeling guilty. All right. And we're going to stop right there. All right. See, it's important. It's really, really important that we grab onto the concept, okay, that we as people haven't really been taught how to strategize our lives. A lot of us don't have a life philosophy. A lot of us don't have a code by which we live. And so as you read this work, okay, as we read this together, I want you to understand something, is that all I'm here to do is relay the information, okay? And I'm going to leave you with this disclaimer. At some point, it's going to work for you if you use it correctly. All knowledge does, all right? So this has been a meeting with the bishop. And you all have a grand day.